This is The Big Life. Big Life. The show for people who want to live life large. I'm Ray Waters.
Thank you, Anita. That's so sweet. Thank you. Well, I know many of you, did y'all rise up yesterday? Did everybody rise up yesterday? I had a friend that spoke at in a blue state the day after the election. And she said everybody was like hungover. Everybody was just like, what happened? They didn't think it was going to happen. It happened. I thought this will be very similar to that. You'll all be like, what happened? I want to actually use a football metaphor to start off. And you don't have to be a Falcons fan. You don't have to be a big fan at all about football. But I think there's an interesting thing that maybe we can use to launch into our talk. The Falcons had a wonderful first half. They went up 21-3. And my friends on Facebook were all writing little notes about, how they were going to celebrate through the night. And then halftime happened. And at halftime, both teams go to their locker rooms, and many of you maybe played, maybe you have family members that played. But what happens at halftime is the coaches get their team aside and they say, okay, these are some things that worked really, really well. Here's some things that didn't work at all. And here's how we're going to attack the second half. Obviously, Coach Belichick and the New England Patriots made some wonderful adjustments at halftime. We came back in the second half. The Falcons scored 7 points. We're now at 28. Looks like it could be our day. And then the Patriots began to score 31 points to end up beating us 34-28. All because they understood the importance of making adjustments. That's what I want to talk to you about today, is how we can make adjustments in our lives. I have been observing something, and not only observing it, but I know this is true in my own life. I've discovered most people living in their whole life in a state of reacting to what happens to them instead of setting the course and being able to say, this is the agenda I want to live my life on. I did that myself. My entire life was always just responding to what was happening to me instead of making some adjustments so I could actually be proactive in the life that I wanted to live. Most people never set the agenda. You simply respond to what is happening around you. In 2013, I wrote the book Tightrope Tango, Unleashing the Power of Balance. The book was written in a parable form. It's easy to read. You can read it in an hour or two. It's very, very simple. But the reason I wrote it is because I was seeing people in every walk of life, C-suite executives, mid-level managers, the person working in sales or the person who's running the office, coming to me and saying, my life seems terribly out of balance. It seems like everybody is pulling at me, and I feel like I don't have any direction myself. It's just going over here and putting out a fire over here, and then it's running over here, and it's putting out a fire over here, and there's no balance at all. According to a recent study published by the American Sociological Review, 70% of American workers struggle with finding a work-life system that works for you. I don't know if any of you can relate to that at all. I know for much of my life, I knew exactly what they were talking about. For many in the workforce, achieving any type of work-life balance can be seen as a myth, like it can't happen. But I want you to know it really can. I'm going to talk to you today about something called life design. Actually taking responsibility for your life and not letting the CEO of the company take that responsibility, not letting a spouse take that responsibility, not let anyone else take the responsibility but you for your own life design. Now here's what I have found. When I talk to people, there's always a few that say, but you don't know, this is just the way I am. When I was a kid growing up, my favorite cartoon was Popeye. I just loved Popeye. That olive oil loving, spinach eating, always getting in trouble, Popeye the Sailor Man. But do you remember what he said, kind of his slogan that he'd say when he'd do something really silly? I am what I am, and that's all that I am. So I'll be at a conference and I'll be talking to people about these principles, and inevitably somebody will come up to me and they'll say, but, and I can know where they're going. So recently we were talking at a real estate meeting, and a lady came up to me, lovely, probably 35 years old. She was dressed to the nines. She looked so professional and so pretty. She's beginning to tell me, And in my mind, her voice just shifted over to Popeye voice. I heard her saying, well, I am what I am, and that's all that I am. I got tickled at her because I thought, everybody says it, but it doesn't have to be true. Life design can happen, but it's hard work. It means really being able to analyze your life and put steps in place that will ensure you can live the healthiest, best life possible. The book that is coming out in March is called Revolution Me. And that's what I want to suggest for each of you, that you look for a personal revolution in your own life, and it could start even in the time that we are spending today. The only way you ever truly handle the work-life balance is when you spend time on your personal life design. I wish it were easy. I wish I could say, well, just share this with your boss, these 3 steps, and then share this with your spouse, these 3 steps, and you've got it. It'll all be a piece of cake. But it won't be a piece of cake. What's going to happen is you thinking through, I'm going to get a little bit closer. I'm trying to knock this TV down behind me, but you need to be responsible for your life. Very, very important. Now, first thing I want to talk to you about is what is absolutely critical for you to have any kind of life design, and that's you have to get a true sense of where you're starting from. You have to look at your life and say, this is where I am. Some of you are my age, some of you are a lot younger. Do y'all remember when we had to use like maps to go somewhere? I mean, like real maps? Was that, you young people y'all need to find an older person and just hang out with an older person and say, show me about these maps. It was crazy, wasn't it? You'd open them up. I never could even get them folded back right. It was hard. You open them up and then you'd just say, here's where I am and here is where I want to go. And you'd look at it and totally a lost art. Nobody knows how to do that anymore. 10 years ago, my wife and I, we went to California. And GPS wasn't very common back then, but what was common was we could go to the computer and we had our whole trip planned out. We were going to have one day that we were going to see everything just about you could see in Southern California. And so we put in the computer, okay, we're starting here and we want to go to Venice Beach. And so it would put 5 pages of how to get to Venice Beach. And then we said, okay, now we're at Venice Beach and we want to go to the Chinese Theater. And it would give us 5 more pages to there. And then we want to go to Malibu. And then anyway, we had about this much stuff, papers. We headed out and went on our day. And had we dropped those papers, we would have been in a mess. We wouldn't have known where we are. Now, thankfully, it's our phone. You're probably like me. I don't know how to get anywhere without my phone. But how wonderful it is if the phone can read where you are and it knows what the destination is. Wow, it just does it. And it's fascinating. And that's what you have to do with your life. You have to be able to look at your life and say, here is where I am. Very, very necessary for you to look at your life and be able to think, how are things going? How's the balance in my life? How's my emotional health in my life? And be really, really honest about what you discover. I can't get where I'm going if I don't have my current location plugged in. I have to have my current location plugged in. Now, what this will do for you is it will help you identify what I want to call sticking points. These sticking points are parts of your life which aren't working for you, and they can come in several different places. Unacceptable sticking points in life are unique to each of us. Here's some of the common categories that we discover. Unhappy or unhealthy relationships. You'll never have work-life balance if you are living in unhealthy, unhappy relationships. It won't work. Unfulfilling or unrewarding careers. You have to be able to honestly say, is this where I'm supposed to be? Is this feeding the need that I have with the gifts and the skills that I bring to the table? Is this where I'm supposed to be? Frustration with our diet or appearance. That's a big part of how the work-life balance is going to work out, is being honest and saying, I'm not healthy. I'm not feeling like I'm supposed to feel. Addictions. All people have addictions. It's important to say that's me. That's an area that I struggle with. Health problems. Uncomfortable housing. It's important to think about that. Unreliable transportation. Or maybe even inadequate preparations for life. I don't know some of the things I need to know. You have to look at those things and say, these are some of the unacceptable sticking points in my life. And until you do that, you're never going to be able to move to the next part of the work-life balance. I have a friend named Rick Griffin. Some of you may know Rick. He grew up in Clayton County. I met he and his wife about 20 years ago, and they owned daycare centers. In fact, they owned 5 daycare centers, the best of the best. They had about 100 employees. They lived in a lake community in a beautiful, beautiful home. They drove late model cars. They were the picture of success. And I remember when I received a phone call that Denise had been rushed to the hospital. She was 40 years old. I got to the hospital to learn that Denise had had a heart attack, and I saw this beautiful, healthy lady all plugged up to all this equipment, and I was hearing she had had a heart attack and it was stress related. Shortly thereafter, Denise recovered, and for that we're glad. Rick also was rushed to the hospital. He had some other issues, but same diagnosis, stress related. After Rick was in the hospital for about a week and then got out, I met him for lunch. And I never will forget the conversation that I had with him. He said, Ray, we have been analyzing our lives and we don't like what we are seeing. He said, we have been working 60 hours a week forever. He said, we don't take family vacations. He said, I have finally realized I don't own a business. The business owns me. He said, we cannot continue the way we are going. And they began to make changes in their life. They sold the daycares. They both began to pursue what they felt like was more in line with the gifts and talents that they had. Rick said something else to me. He said, I have spent my whole life working on plan B, never working on plan A. And he said, it has created in me enormous stress. Now, we're 15 years later. Rick has built a wonderful career. Denise works for the Clayton County Board of Education. She loves what she's doing. Rick loves what he's doing. They have learned how to have some sense of balance in their lives, but it would not have happened if they didn't take time to say, where are we? Why are we in our 40s and having such health problems? And they discovered it was because of the way that they were living their life. For there to be a life change, you must have a dream or a goal of what you want your life to be. That's the second thing I want you to get. Once you determine where you are, the second thing that has to happen is you have to have a goal or a dream of what kind of life you genuinely want to live. I want to introduce you to a term called end point. End point. End point is what you imagine your life can be in certain areas that are important to you. Now, the end point that you're going to set is not going to be the ultimate end point. The end points can change, but at least initially, as you evaluate your life and where you are, you set some end points in some important areas. Let me tell you kind of a way that I hang on to the end point idea. When I was a kid, I used to read comic books, and in the front page, inside page of the comic book, there was always an advertisement. Anybody remember what the advertisement usually was? Sea monkeys, that's good. I tell you one. Anybody remember Charles Atlas? Those were the ones I remember. Here's the Charles Atlas story. Skinny guy takes his girlfriend to the beach. He's laying on the beach minding his own business, just being a skinny guy. And muscle-bound bully comes up, kicks dirt in the skinny guy's face, and takes the girl. Skinny guy is devastated. He goes home, he finds the Charles Atlas advertisement, buys the weights, begins to lift weights. Next cartoon picture, he now is at the beach. The bully can't do anything to him, and he gets the girl. Do y'all remember that? I mean, I would read that and I thought, boy, if only it worked like that. It doesn't work like that, but if only it worked like that. That's a picture of an endpoint. Here's a skinny guy saying, I want to have muscles. I'm going to have muscles, and then taking the steps to accomplish it. Now, that's a juvenile type of an illustration, but the idea, I think you understand. You have to have an endpoint of what you desire your life to be, where you sense you want your life to go. You can call it a goal. You can call it a dream. I like to call it endpoint. And when I identify an endpoint, that's the place I want to get to. It's much easier for me to begin to put steps in place that will take me there. My endpoint may be something simple, or sometimes my endpoint might be something very complex. It might be something that can be accomplished quickly, or for some endpoints, it's going to take the rest of my life. I have an interest in spiritual things. Not everybody does, and that's okay. But an endpoint for me in spiritual thinking is I want to constantly be growing as a loving person. I'm by nature a taker. I want to learn how to become more of a giver. I want to be someone that people say he brings light into the room. That is an endpoint that will never change. Hopefully that'll always be there for me, and hopefully I'll always be making steps and growing in that area, while there are other endpoints that for me have changed along the way. And what happens sometimes is, in my 54 years old understanding, I'll set an endpoint, and as I head in that direction in one area of my life, I'll realize the endpoint could be better, and I'll change the endpoint, but at least I am moving off of dead center. That's important for me, to move off of dead center. If I were you, I would be thinking about, once you kind of do the GPS, what is my current location? I would begin to think about, where are some places you want to go in your life emotionally? Where are some things that maybe you haven't had that you say, I want this to be a part of my life? In your relationships, I want this to be a part of my life. Now, we could fill pages probably of that, and I don't want to put too much of a burden on you. You might need to settle for just 2 or 3 things to start with, but your life will not move in any direction unless you take the time to say, this is where I am and this is where I want to be. Anything else is just you responding constantly, and that never moves you to where you want to be. Change begins when I understand what has to change. I pick an endpoint that's different and that's better, and then it will continue as I learn the steps and directions required to get me to that endpoint. It's okay if the endpoint changes. You just know that you want to start walking on a path now. If the endpoint has to change, that's okay. Don't worry too much about knowing what the ultimate outcome is. This is a journey we're on, and you're going to take some steps, and it's going to move you in the right direction. Another thing that's important, for there to be life change, you have to reprogram how you think about yourself and how you think about your problems. If you are by nature bent to think that you are never going to get this right, you're never going to get this right. You have to begin to say, I can do this. I can do this. Henry Ford said at first, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. You're right. And so we have to quit saying, I'm never going to be able to get this right. My life's going to be out of balance forever. I'm just going to be pulled here and pulled there, because you will actually create that life for you, and that's not what you want. You want to be able to say, that's not my life. You also need to begin to see your problems differently. One of the great writers of all time, a psychiatrist really, Viktor Frankl, The Meaning of Life is his big book that he wrote from his experience in the concentration camps as a Jew during the time of the Holocaust. Viktor Frankl, stripped naked, the Nazis giving him so much grief, came to a realization. He had kind of an eye-opening, an awakening. He said, you know what, they can take my clothes, they can take everything from me, but they cannot take from me my attitude and what I feel about this. They cannot take that from me. And so he just determined he was going to be different. And what he discovered was the ones that survived the Holocaust, by and large, were people who had a different kind of an attitude. Others would say, oh, woe is me, this is horrible, this is terrible. And they seemed to die sooner than those who said, this is the hardest thing I've ever been through, but I'm going to make it through, and they are not going to break me. They are not going to break me. I'm going to learn what I need to learn, and I'm going to share this story the rest of my life. And I've got family members, and I'm going to tell these family members how I was able to get through this. And he said those people were the ones who survived. And it's fascinating. They just had a different take on the problems. And I don't know about you, but I have to remind myself of that all the time, because I have a tendency to see my problems as the biggest thing in the world, and they're not. I ran across this 10 years ago maybe, but I started saying it a couple of years ago, and now it's become kind of a saying in our family. When anybody here whine by nature a little bit? Anybody whine or complain? Anybody? Or maybe just point to the person next to you if they whine or complain. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Here's what I have discovered. Here's what I've discovered, and you may want to write this down. This might be something to go on your refrigerator. When I complain, I am a living, breathing crap magnet. That's what I have discovered. When I complain and whine, I am a living, breathing crap magnet. It just seems like that's what's drawn to me. But if I say, you know what, this is a difficulty, but man, this is going to make a great story. When I get through this, it's going to be a great story. When that's the way I approach it, then better things seem to happen. I seem to bring into my life people who are positive, who have an energy about them. When I am complaining and whining, I guarantee the right people don't come in. It's always the wrong people who come in. So that's important to understand. Another thing I want to say about you creating this endpoint and being able to experience this life design is this: past failures have little to do with future victory. By that, I want you to know maybe you have failed 10 times. Don't give up. Don't give up. Sometimes it's just one more chance, one more opportunity to do it, and it will work. Listen, I have tried so many different things. People who have had diet experiences, it's funny to me, different diets work for different people. You might try 5 things, eating differently, and it not work. Some people quit and say, I'm not even going to worry about it again. Some people keep looking for that something that's going to work, and then they hit it, and they say, this worked for me. So don't think just your past failure means you're not going to have any kind of victory, because it doesn't work like that. Another thing I want to say is this: for there to be change, you must be willing to step out of your comfort zone, and that's very difficult for us. You need to begin to do things you've never done before. These are the steps necessary to move you towards that end point. You're going to have to say, that's where I want to go, and so to get there, I'm going to have to do things differently. I can't put my feet up on the recliner and live like I have always been living, because if I do that, I'm going to keep getting what I've always been getting. I've got to do it differently. If you want to experience something you've never experienced before, you have to do something you've never done before. Another thing I want to share is this: a revolution of self doesn't happen without intentional, focused action. Intentional, focused action. Recently, I was looking at my life and trying to analyze aspects of it, and I came to the conclusion I was waking up dull. I don't know, I'd never had that experience where I felt like I was just waking up dull, and it was usually middle of the day before I actually had some life. And I said, what is wrong with me? And the conclusion I came to was my morning routine had slipped. I was not waking up the way I had when I was at my best. I wasn't waking up that way. I was kind of sliding into the day, and I was tired, and it was just, I was worthless the first part of the day. So I said, I need to put that morning routine back together. I need to tighten it up. How do you wake up? So I said, okay, I want to wake up at 6:15 in the morning. What do I want to do first thing? And what I want to do first thing is I want to roll up on one shoulder, one elbow, and I want to just go through quickly some things I'm grateful for. Just before I get up, that's what I want to do. First things, what am I grateful for? Then I want to go turn the shower on, and while the shower's getting warm, I want to do quickly 10 little repetition exercise. It could be push-ups, 10 push-ups, or it could be 10 deep knee bends, it could be 10 kettlebell swings, it could be 10 just something, not for exercise, but just to get the blood pumping a little bit. Then I want to shower, then I want to get ready, and I want to walk into my office at 7 a.m. And what I have found is when I do that, and then spend the first few minutes in my office journaling, when I do that, at 7:15, 7:20, I'm sharp, I feel like I can write, I feel like I'm creative, I feel like it's good. Now here's what happened. So I'm trying to be intentional, and so I start putting that together, and it's not working. It had worked, it's not working, and I tried to think what is wrong, and what was wrong is I wasn't practicing my evening routine, and I was staying up too late, watching politics, which wasn't helping me at all. It was making me stay awake at night, and so I said, wait a minute, I've got to change some things, and so I changed some things, and I said, you know what? At this point in time, you go to your bedroom, you pull out a book, you read a book, you don't read your iPad, you don't read your computer, you read a book, this just nice fiction book, and then you turn the light off and you go to sleep. Instantly, it started working for me. I was going to bed, instead of going to bed at 12:31, 1:30 and trying to get up at 6:20 in the morning, suddenly I'm going to bed at 10:15. And I'm getting up, and it's like, this feels so much better. But it took intentionality. And why is it that we don't do that? We just keep living the same old, when you have the potential. People 5 generations ago, they didn't realize they had the potential for the change of their life, but we know now we can change our lives. And so it was very important for me to understand that. That was very helpful to me. Maybe it'll be helpful to you. Another thing, failure happens when we don't do the right things, when we don't do the right work, and when we move in opposition to our stated goals. So now my definition of failure is if I'm doing things that aren't taking me to that end point, that's failure. If I'm attempting to move in the direction of where those endpoints are, it's success. Every day, I can every day feel like I'm moving in the right direction. Our potential is reached when we regularly take steps in the direction that we want to go. And another thing that encourages me is this: anything you focus on a daily basis with a clear intent of getting better at it, you will get better at it. And so it may not be easy day 1, day 2, day 3, but you do about 10,000 hours on something and they say you can become an expert, and it's true. Listen, so many people, life happens to them. I want to happen to life. And that happens when you have a life design, you know where you're starting from, you recognize your end point, and you put the work in to accomplish it. When you do what we've talked about and you shift from reaction to actually taking action in your life, what happens is your whole psychological condition changes. Energy and excitement show up to replace fatigue and dissatisfaction. You begin to say, I love my life. I love my life. Now, I want to give you 2 final thoughts, and thank you all for being so attentive. I hope you're eating still if you have food. I want to leave 2 things with you that's important. One, there is an element of fear in what I'm talking about because it is easier to just maintain what we know and not change. And I get that. And it takes some courage, but it's courage that you can have. Psychologists have long studied why some people have low self-esteem when they look like they have everything going for them. And one of their conclusions is sometimes people who look like they have it all together still have an issue with fear. When they have something they know they need to do and then they don't do it, they are diminished a little bit in their mind day by day by day. On the other hand, when someone says, you know what, I'm going to face this. I want to design a beautiful life. I want a big, wonderful, loving, balanced life. When they choose to do that and they say no to the fear, their life expands a little bit. They're a little bit healthier. They stand a little bit taller. I'll let you know of an experience when I realized this. I was a little boy and grew up at Riverdale Recreation Association, and there was a bully there that tormented me. I don't know if any of you ever had that experience or not, but it was tough. And every time I'd leave the ballpark, I'd be crying. I'd go home and I'd tell my dad, this bully is just driving me crazy, wanting my dad to do something for me, help me. And my dad would say, son, you have to confront the bully. I can't do this for you. You have to do it. Well, I hated that. I mean, it's like, be my dad, help me here, do something. But no, you have to do it. So I never will forget little 10-year-old brain thinking, this is my day. I've got to do this. I cannot do anything else. I've got to do it. We went to the ball field. Games were going on all over, but there was one field kind of in the middle where there was no game going on that night, and the bully was in the middle of the field. And my heart was pounding something. I wish you could even feel my chest is pounding right now just thinking about this feeling for a 10-year-old. And I never will forget, I had in my mind what I was going to say, and I never will forget walking out to the pitcher's mound where the bully was, and I said to her, you listen to me. You listen to me. You're not going to be my bully anymore. And she punched me right in the nose. Her brother actually goes to church with us. So, I mean, this is all true. She punched me right in the nose. But I remember in that split second before my nose started bleeding, I remember thinking, I'm so proud of me. I faced a fear head on, and I felt better about myself because I did. You will feel better about yourself if you say, I'm afraid of stepping into a new life. I'm afraid of changing some things. But if you say, I cannot live like I have been living, I want better, and take the steps. And it may not be a huge altering experience for you. It might be just incremental, but it will be worth it. One final thing. I really believe that my life needs to be lived from a place of love. I really think that love is the key to everything. I miss it a million miles, but I know when I am coming from that place of love, it's a wonderful thing. And part of that is when I feel genuine gratitude in my heart for everything. And if we could make gratitude a priority in our life. I told you in the mornings I try to roll up on one elbow. It's not rocket science. I just try to be thankful for maybe 5 new things that I haven't been thinking about, but just 5 things that I want to really focus on and make gratitude a part of my day. My dad is he comes from kind of a mathematician point of view, as a computer whiz, and now he's up in age. But when I was a kid, he taught me poetry, and he's not the kind of guy he looked kind of like Brutus from Popeye. He kind of, as a young man, he had this big bushy beard, and he was just kind of a genius in math, but he loved poems. And so as a kid, we would go on family trips, and he would teach me poems. And then I was able to teach them to my kids, and so that's been kind of a cool thing. But one of the poems that he taught me, and then I did pass this on to my kids, and now I'm about to pass it on to my grandkids, is a poem about gratitude. And I just want to share this with you kind of as a way to close. Today, upon a bus, I saw a lovely girl with golden hair, and I envied her. She looked so happy, and I wished I was fair. When suddenly she rose to leave, and as she hobbled down the aisle, she had one leg, and she wore a crutch. But as she passed, she smiled. Oh God, forgive me when I whine. I have 2 legs, and the world is mine. Later on my way to work, I stopped to buy some sweets, and the lad who sold them had such charm. I talked to him a while. If I were late, to do no harm. And as I turned to leave, he said, "Thank you, sir, for being so kind. It's nice to talk to folks like you." He said, "You see, I'm blind. Oh God, forgive me when I whine. I have 2 eyes, and the world is mine." Later, walking down the street, I saw a lad with eyes of blue. He stood and he watched the others play. Seemed he didn't know exactly what to do. And I said, "Why don't you go and join the others, dear?" He looked straight ahead. He spoke not a word. And then I knew he could not hear. Oh God, forgive me when I whine. I have 2 ears, and the world is mine. With legs to take me where I'd go, and with eyes to see the sunsets glow, and with ears to hear what I should know. Oh God, forgive me when I whine, for I am blessed indeed, and the world is mine. Thank you very much for letting me spend some time.